Welcome to But Are There Dragons, a podcast where two friends pick a book at least one of them has not read and work their way through it a few chapters at a time. I'm your host, Kritter.
And I'm your host, Jess.
And we're continuing this adventure with The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, with me as the resident Lord of the Rings veteran.
And me as the Lord of the Rings first-timer.
In this, our first episode of Season 4, we're going to discuss Book 5, Chapters 1 and 2. Season 4! So before we dive in, Jessica, what's new with you? How you feeling?
I feel pretty good. You know, a little certain something happened this last weekend, known as my wedding. So,
Woo!
Yeah, it's official. There's a Mr. Jessica out there. And now we're home and stuff can go back to somewhat normal. So that's also a good thing. How about you?
I am doing well. I'm so close to being in my third trimester. So your girl is getting more and more uncomfortable as the days go on, but it's more and more exciting too. So times are changing for all of us, it seems.
Absolutely.
Yay!
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's get into this book, shall we?
Let's do it.
All right, so Book 5, Chapter 1, Minas Tirith. It's wild to me, the word Return of the King. I don't know, right? That's the last book of the trilogy.
I feel like it's gone really quick.
Yeah.
Not in a negative way. I don't think we've skipped anything. I feel like we took our time. We've savored the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we got here with really good time.
Yeah, I think so. I think we did. It's going to be weird once we're done, too, because, this reread has been on my list for a very long time. And having read them again in such detail, I think it's been a whole new experience for me, because you and I are both let it wash over me kind of people, right?
Yeah,
we're
totally
not delving into the minutia, but this time we kind of are. So yeah. It's been different.
Good stuff.
It is. Okay, so we start this book back with Pippin and Gandalf blazing a trail to Minas Tirith. At one point, Pippin exclaims, seeing great fires in the distance and asking if there are dragons. Very good question. But Gandalf explains that the fires are the beacons of Gondor already lit, calling for aid. First of all, you love to see dragons get mentioned.
Love to hear it.
And second, did the beacons already being lit surprise you?
Absolutely. I was like, wait, what's happening? Okay. We're going out of order. Okay, fine. Bring it. And then it proceeds to tell us in detail where all the beacons are. So there are a lot of landmarks that I don't necessarily know, right? But, the litany is listed out for all the spots where they have beacons.
It is. Because it's, I don't think it's only in the extended edition, but in the movies, Pippin lights the first beacon, right? Gandalf enlists him to do it. You forget? Okay, well, never mind. It's different than in the movies.
I believe you.
Okay. Also, just a little note, we've got a Nazgul sighting. Right away after the first night's ride. I have a feeling
we're counting those, right? We're gonna count those.
That's the plan.
This is the
first one
sighting. This is
I have a feeling this book might get a little overwhelming.
Oh, fair.
But
fair.
We can do it for now. I think doing it for now is a worthy exercise.
Sure.
So after this big long ride, Gandalf is greeted at the outer wall of Minas Tirith, but the guards are suspicious of Pippin, of all people, who, by the way, if you didn't catch our rap party, won MVP for the Two Towers. So go Pippin. We'll see how he does this time. Anyways, they weren't understanding what he might be, They're like, what is this, a dwarf? I'm not sure. Gandalf vouches for him, though, calling him a valiant man, which rouses Pippin from his sleep, because he was asleep, in protest. Neither a man nor valiant, save perhaps by necessity, he says. So I missed our Two Towers MVP and his quick wit. Are you happy to be back with him here?
Absolutely. And I think that the way that he just demurs that he's just so sassy about, a man I am not, nor valiant. He's humble, but also has a pert mouth. So I like that.
Yeah. It was funny how he stood up for himself, but also was like, valiant. I'm not sure. Also, I don't know if you're only listening and not watching this. I just now noticed this. We are recording this on the eve of the 4th of July. It's a slightly off schedule recording for us just because of the holiday, and we're wearing red and blue
and white.
Oh, and he wrote the white on the headset. Jessica's wearing red. I'm wearing blue. So completely unintentional patriotism.
Yeah, but it happens.
But go us.
Go, yeah. Way to nail it.
Yeah. #America.
Yep.
Okay, so it seems that Gandalf has a similar reputation in Gondor as he has elsewhere. Always with tidings of grief and danger. Are we surprised?
No, but I love the fact that in this chapter they actually talk about it. And I know that it's not there, but I've kind of imposed on that. But you come with tidings of grief and danger, as is your wont, they say. And Gandalf's response, I kind of infused with a little bit of exasperation. Because I come seldom, but when my help is needed. Because it's one of, I think, 3 different times in this chapter. Somebody was like, oh, you're such a dire messenger and you never come except for when, stuff goes sideways or whatever. And at one point in the chapter, I was just like, I'm getting the feeling that this gets old for Gandalf. I feel a little bit bad for him. Nobody's ever happy to see him because he's basically always a harbinger of doom, or at the very least bringing bad news.
Basically, at a certain point, he's gonna be like, "Fine, you want me to stay home? I can just stay home.
I can just stay home.
You can handle this on your own. You don't need to know that there's a giant army coming, or that Isengard fell, or any of this. He would be totally justified in replying to some people like that. Oh, you don't want me here? That's fine. I can leave. He would never, but he would be justified.
But it's clear he hears it a lot.
Every single time he goes to a new place, as far as this trilogy and actually including The Hobbit is concerned. So I thought that was funny. So Pippin is struck by the grandness and beauty of Minas Tirith, but notes that it does seem to have fallen into decay. Does anything stand out to you from the description of the city?
So the things that stood out to me, we always know it's always kind of funny and a roll of the dice, what's going to stand out to me while I'm going through. So the thing that stood out to me is the way the 7 tiers were described and how the gates are offset, right? So the gates don't line up. They're all at different points, which seems strategic. And then I also took note of Pippin noticing that on every major street, heavily paraphrasing, that there's at least one empty great house on every street, speaking to it's not as full as it should be. There's not as many people here as there should be.
I agree that it is a crapshoot as to what will stand out to me also, and none of the architecture. I mean, I read the architecture and I understand that it was there, but for me, it was the outfits of the guards of the Citadel that sounded pretty awesome. They had mithril helmets. Hello, that's wild.
Yeah, so I was like, isn't that stuff super expensive and we're just putting it on as adornment? Because it was the wings or something. It was decorative.
Something, but it was only for the guards of the Citadel too, I think, which is the big bad, the white, not the white.
And so were those the same guards that are dressed in the heir of Elendil bannerman clothes?
The white tree blossoming beneath a silver crown on their surcoats. Yeah, that outfit. If I was a guard, if I had to wear just a not regular, because these guys aren't regular, but this is basically the equivalent of in Game of Thrones, the Kingsguard, or the fancy fanciest of fancy guard outfits. So
that stuck out to me because this is all, so to your point, to use your analogy, Game of Thrones, right? Like they're flashing the coat of arms for heirs of Elendil, but nobody in the city is the heir of Elendil. You know, there's only one left, and we know where he is, and it's not Minas Tirith. So I thought that it was kind of neat that they are wearing a coat of arms essentially for someone who is not represented in the city currently.
They're waiting. And they walk past the tree that apparently is dead, looks dead. It's the tree that Pippin saw in whenever he grabbed the stone.
Palantir.
Yeah, the Palantir. So it's all coming together, basically. But
I definitely took note of that. The 7 stones get mentioned. And I was like, oh, so the Palantir are linked somehow to Minas Tirith. And that would make sense because one Palantir in particular, we know that Aragorn said was his birthright.
Right. So, and we know like the history of them. The men essentially had them in their strongholds way back in the day. So, I guess the men of Numenor. The men. It's the history. Yes. Lots and lots of history in the series.
Lots of it.
So, yeah, it's fun to go to a place that's so clearly invested with all of that lore. Even if the king or the heir is nowhere to be found, as far as Denethor and the rest of them know so far. Speaking of, Gandalf warns Pippin not to mention Frodo or Aragorn. And when Pippin is shocked at Gandalf's comment that Aragorn would claim the kingship when he came, we get another sick burn from Gandalf. If you have walked all these days with closed ears and mind asleep, wake up now. Can you believe Pippin really didn't know about Aragorn? Like, was he just... Is that real life? I was so surprised.
I mean, Pippin is the one who didn't even know where they were on a map, right? Like Merry did.
True.
So
true.
As much as I love our guy Pippin, I just don't think he's a pay attentioner, which I'm not judging because I'm not a pay attentioner either. But I do think it's pretty crazy that we find out that Strider is Aragorn and Aragorn is the heir, and Pippin still doesn't know that. That is pretty wild. Yeah. I do think it's fun. Gandalf also said to him, "This is no time for hobbit pertness." You know, like just telling him up front, you know, keep your sass in check. Yeah. In terms of architecture, though, there was one other throwback. Pippin mentions, Pippin kind of draws a corollary between the way that the stonework is done in Minas Tirith and reminded of the hewn rocks of Argonath, and awe fell on him. And so again, I felt like that kind of tied back to those Numenorian roots, the men. So that I kind of liked that because it was a real subtle way for the read to remind me like, oh, these are those roots. These men are in fact descendants of those people. It would make sense that they would have some architectural likenesses.
For sure. Yeah. It's the lore. It's in there. It's all interwoven, which is really cool. It kind of reminds me of, to just talk about another property like the White Tower, you know, because it's like all in tears. It's whitewashed or should be. Just, it sounds really like a cool, neat place. And of course, like we've seen it in the movie and it is really impressive and majestic. So it was easy to picture, basically. So they get to Denethor. Gandalf greets him, and Denethor already has tidings of Boromir's death. He's in possession of the cloven horn of Boromir, and he's been told that Pippin witnessed it already. And I think that was a conversation they had like out at the gates or something, like literally. So he's hearing things very quickly. We also get confirmation that it's only been 13 days since Boromir died. Yep. But with everything that's happened, it truly feels like much longer. Even, of course, the read was like very pleasurable, but it just feels like so much has happened. Does that blow your mind as much as it does?
Yeah, mine? I highlighted it. I made a note. I was like, so they rode for like 2 more days. So we're saying that the contents of what happened in the 2 towers took place over the course of essentially 10, maybe 11 days. Tops.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Insane. Like Isengard got taken down y'all.
Mhm.
Like in 10 days, you know, from
Yeah.
conception to
Mhm.
birth. I don't know.
Yeah,
It
no, but
literally
it's
just
yeah, it
how
was
is that?
really it was kind of crazy to hear that and be like, "Oh, that was a week and a half ago."
Yeah.
All of that happened in a week and a half, essentially.
Merry Pippin and Treebeard became best friends in a very short period.
And overthrew Isengard, you know, no big.
Yeah, just like casual friend stuff, you know?
It's like team building.
Yeah, but like, you know, it takes team building
With
to a
some
whole nother
destruction.
level. Yeah, with a little destruction.
Just a
And
little.
it's not like an exercise anymore, it's real life.
Mhm.
Anyway, so Denethor questions Pippin about Boromir's death, noting wisely. Oh, and Pippin notes wisely that the mightiest man may be slain by one arrow, and Boromir was pierced by many. He then offers his service to Denethor as payment of a debt he feels he has. Would you have done the same?
No. Because Denethor already rubs me the wrong way. I know there's movie bias. I understand there's movie bias. We went into this and just immediately I was like, this man is working him hard. And Pippin, I feel like, starts off on the defensive. And maybe it's a little bit of defensiveness on Pippin's behalf as well. But like, no, you don't come at my boy like that. Ultimately, throughout this scene, Pippin feels like a bit of a tug of war rope between these two men. And I didn't like it at all. And so Denethor is already a no thank you for me.
Maybe wouldn't have just immediately been like, my sword is your sword.
No. And I don't think that it's right that Pippin feels he owes him anything. Yes, Boromir was brave, and yes, he wanted to save you, but it's not like you sat there and ate honey cakes while, you know, he got murdered. You were taken into custody. Like you were then captured and hauled away and faced your own trials and tribulations. It's not as though you abandoned him to die on your behalf.
Right.
Anyways, so I had some thoughts and feelings about this when I read this, but it's very sweet and endearing and just shows, you know, the heart of a hobbit.
For sure. I wanted to note in this little sequence, whenever he does offer himself and his service to Denethor, a little literary umami. First in this season, a pale smile, like a gleam of cold sun on a winter's evening, passed over the old man's face. Like a pale smile. And cold, right? Because it's like cold sun on a winter's. It's just kind of like, I don't love that. It's a beautiful description, but what I'm getting is something that's kind of chilling.
Almost reptilian.
Yeah, and I'm worried that it is like movie bias, but I feel like Tolkien was sending us some symbols here with the language that he used. We've already got this man being very cold and calculating. So you mentioned this already, but Gandalf and Denethor then proceed to basically have a staring contest. And Pippin sees that they are rather similar. Both have wizard vibes, and though Denethor looked more kingly, beautiful, powerful, and older, Pippin could sense that Gandalf, in fact, had the greater power, deeper wisdom, and veiled majesty, and was much older. When Gandalf and Pippin took their leave from Denethor, Gandalf and Denethor again share tense words, Denethor reminding Gandalf that he won't be used and that his primary directive is the good of Gondor, and Gandalf one-upping him, noting that all worthy things are in his care, for he is also a steward. How did this first meeting / confrontation hit for you between these two great men?
I mean, sparks and oil. It was, and so I can definitely understand the concept of being a leader of people and having to work against other strong personalities like Gandalf or whatever. But this seemed very conflict ridden from the get-go, and I don't really feel like all of that came from Gandalf. I feel like a lot of that came from Denethor. And I also got from the reading that it seems like Denethor Faramir, like him, but not so much Boromir, seems to have a very strong charisma, right? And can read between the lines and has a very high intellect and is getting more information than, a regular man might.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was an interesting note that some of their background was kind of giving him advantage, and lets him read between the lines more. And obviously his statecraft, he's been the steward for however long. I'm sure he's picked up some tricks. I understand not wanting to get worked by somebody else, but at the same time, I felt that he was truly, truly being obstructive just because he could.
Yeah. Like questioning Pippin when Gandalf is right there.
Yes.
Basically,
it felt very much like a power play, and I don't have much patience for that sort of behavior in fiction or in real life. I would be like, okay, I'm all set with you.
Right.
Have fun burning down the castle. I don't...
Yeah. If you want to talk, let's talk, but don't leave me sitting here while you're questioning a hobbit about
cooling
how your son
my heels just because you want to, have a measuring contest. I don't know. It's just not a good look.
That's how it felt. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So when they're alone again, Gandalf's mood completely shifts. He seems tickled by Pippin's choice to enter Denethor's service. We also learn, as you mentioned, that Denethor has a bit of, I guess we could call it magic in him. Him and Faramir both strongly carry the blood of Westerness, and he's got, quote, long sight, which they describe as a bit of a mind reader, even for those that are far off. So did this, bit of magic surprise you? And would you want long sight?
Yes, it surprised me. Yes, I would like it. I think that it's insight into the character that I would have liked to have known before. I think that it would probably change my perception of him.
Yeah.
Because I really just thought he was a grumbly old man. So
yeah.
Not that he isn't a grumbly old man. That didn't change. But it's advantage, right? He's got tools in his tool belt that not everybody else has available to him. And it does help him apparently understand things in a way that other people, allows him insight that other people don't have.
Yeah. He's got whenever you send somebody a meme and you saw it a week ago on TikTok, I always try to resist the urge, and I feel like I really do succeed at not being like, oh yeah, I saw this already. You know what I mean? I laugh.
Right.
I feel like Denethor's the opposite.
Yes.
He's like, oh yeah, I saw this already. Great. Okay.
Synced it. Already synced it.
Yeah, why are we what good am I to you?
Don't bother me.
Yeah, it's just kind of surely there is stuff that I know that you don't know, so why don't you just stop being such a meanie about it? And
I think his bad attitude and the long sight are completely unrelated. I think
so too.
I think that he's just kind of an ornery old dude, and he has this benefit of this long sight, which I would think, to your point, I would think it would imbue you with a certain amount of patience. Other people don't have all the information that I have to work with. No, he chose to go another way, just to be a bigger jerk about it.
Cool. Basically, on not his throne, on his steward's chair, just kind of you're wasting my time. Okay, thanks. Which is just not a good look.
No.
Not my favorite. I too would like long sight. I don't think I'd have any problem being psychic. I think it would be nice.
Well, and I like knowing things.
Same.
Knowing how things work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, although I don't think of myself really as a gossip, but every once in a while I'll just be like, oh.
I just like to know, I'm really good at I'm really good at staying mum, right? If I'm supposed to.
Yes.
I just love to know things. So I feel like that would be just the ticket for me. personally. I guess if you're listening or watching, let us know in the comments or in Discord if you would want long sight, or if you would rather go about life with limited access to other people's thoughts. I mean, obviously we don't know the extent. My impression is this is more like he can kind of stay abreast of the goings on in the world by kind of seeing them through other people. It's not like he can read like the finite, like very personal thoughts of people, but it's more like seeing through other people's eyes. That's how I envision it.
I took it as like an added layer on context clues, right? So even in the section that you're talking about, Gandalf mentions that as well as you did, Pippin, there are still things that you mentioned that he couldn't help but notice. You know, he knows that there was another member of your party who was revered or something along those lines, that in fact Boromir was not the leader of the group that came away, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, okay, so this is kind of like he's always going to roll with advantage.
Level 20 insight.
Yeah, he's going to nat 20 on insight on basically every roll, and he's able to make really, really good inferences and fill in the blanks, reading between the lines of all the things that you're saying. That's kind of how I took it.
And my guess is like sort of just based on like when they said, you know, he can also read things from people far off. Kind of like whenever Frodo went and sat on that chair, you know, and he could kind of like whatever, see the movements of armies and whatnot. From it like way off in the distance, like that is kind of what I'm picturing for like far away stuff.
That
and
makes
so
a lot
like
of sense.
Of course knowing, like reading like the very specific and personal things in people's minds, it would be very intrusive, and I would like to prevent myself from that part of being like psychic. I think the long sight and just like keeping track of the goings on and having insane insight would be pretty great.
In D&D terms, I think it's detect thoughts. And when you do detect thoughts, it takes the surface level, but there's a DC roll, I think, to do it, to delve in deeper.
Okay.
I couldn't help myself. I had to make it D&D.
No, I think when I heard the word long sight, I was like, that sounds like an ability that somebody would have, like some kind of, I don't know which class, but it fits in D&D.
It totally fits.
Okay, so before Gandalf leaves Pippin, he asks him to make sure Shadowfax is being treated well. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Gandalf as a horse dad?
I would give him a 9.5. I think that this is fantastic because he respects Shadowfax's autonomy. He knows that he is deigning to be, you know, stabled because they don't allow horses within the city. I think Gandalf is really crushing it as horse dad.
Okay, we just need to see more to give him the full 10. We just don't have enough context.
Just a little bit more information, but I think I really found it very endearing that he asked Pippin to check on Shadowfax.
I also like, you know, because Tolkien is really good about really getting to the meat and potatoes of a story, right? We cover just so much that happens in these stories, and the books are not that long, right? And but the fact that he took a minute to be like, Gandalf's gonna make sure Shadowfax is taken care of, just goes to show, I think, how much he like respects animals. And I don't know, it just made me like Tolkien even more, because he didn't have to mention that at all. But
so I go back to the Bill the Pony defense, like just all of that. He took the time to write that out. That is so darling to me. Like that's so excellent to me. Anytime we talk about and the horses of Rohan, and it's good stuff.
Although I think this actually reminds me, and I got reminded later reading this in a different passage as well, but I saw, I think on TikTok or somewhere, that there are in fact more named horses in the Lord of the Rings than there are named women.
I believe that, because I feel like there have been 4, 5
at least, and then we get more later.
Okay.
And so
we don't have many.
Oh, women. Yeah, right. Yes. We've got Eowyn, Arwen, Galadriel, Luthien,
no,
who's not
Luthien is the girl.
Yeah, who is not like
in the story, but she's a named female in the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's four. I don't know if any
Lobelia
others.
Sackville Baggins.
Yes, sorry.
And I'm not sure if there are other women in the list of relatives.
It's been so
Maybe
long since
there
I've
are.
thought of the Sackville Bagginses.
I know. Well, sorry, I shouldn't have brought them up.
You shouldn't have brought it up. Now I'm going to be gritting my teeth.
I can't confirm that this is true. And I imagine, like, because now that I'm thinking of the Fellowship, where he has that big long list of relatives who get bequeathed things, part of me is like, did they include those people, or is it only people that have like speaking parts? You know, not people who just get mentioned, but anyways, it doesn't matter. It does feel like that could be very true, though, given the attention that horses are paid. Yeah. But it is a nice thing. I wish there were more named important women, but I do appreciate that the horses get some respect.
Yeah.
Anyways, we meet Beregond, soldier of Gondor, and he's essentially Pippin's orientation leader. They spend a pretty delightful morning together, and then Pippin spends the rest of the day with Beregond's son, Virgil. Did you have any standout moments from this?
I thought they were adorable, honestly. I thought that it was great that he spotted him. I thought that the way that Pippin played with Virgil was adorable, you know, when he's, oh, you have the look of him, and he kind of, Virgil was kind of blustery and bravado with him, and Pippin answered in kind. I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah.
And him talking about, there'll be halfling warriors riding in with the riders of Rohan, and how he regretfully had to dispel that tale. I thought that it was a nice little interlude, a great positive experience for Pippin with the folks of Minas Tirith.
Mm-hmm.
The father-son act was super adorable.
Yeah, we definitely didn't get anything like that in the movies. Like that, it was Pippin didn't have a little jaunt on the town with the town folk in the movies. So it was a fun little thing that I had truly completely forgotten
what it
about.
gave me, honestly, was Bard vibes. So Bard with his son, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what that made me think of is, okay, so we're going to meet some regular folk. Okay, cool.
That's true. So I will note that we got another Nazgul, not sighting, but we heard the Nazgul chilling.
Okay. It's only, we're not going to talk it because we're not going to count it because we said, winged shadow sightings.
Oh, okay. Sightings only. Good to know. And then in this conversation, I wanted to just put a little pin in the fact that we found out, I'm not sure we heard this before, that Pippin is 28, nearly 29, and that wasn't yet like of age. And I know that we knew that he was the young one and he wasn't fully like of age, but I don't know that we had like his actual age.
Number. I don't think we had a number either, honestly.
So it's good to know. Wee little lad, 28, almost 29. So after this day, Pippin, with a lonely gloom upon him, makes his way back to his room with Gandalf and falls asleep. He wakes late in the night to find Gandalf there. Gandalf tells him to go back to sleep, that he will take him to Denethor at sunrise, then notes that they'll actually just wait till he's summoned because the darkness has begun. There will be no sunrise. Not the most hopeful end to a chapter. No. Any thoughts before we move on?
It's the first chapter of the book, so we're starting out with like, oh, okay, soul crushing to start. Got it.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah. So, good to move on to the next chapter. Any final thoughts?
I did have, there was another, the Shadow of Doom. There was another umami I wanted to share. There's a couple of spots. So this one's a little less. I'm going to do the not so nice one and then the pretty one.
Okay.
It's Pippin talking. No. Who's talking to Pippin? I think it's Beregond talking to Pippin. About the fact that war is imminent. And then he says, Here will the hammer stroke fall hardest, and for that reason Mithrandir came hither in such haste. For if we fall, who shall stand? And Master Peregrine, do you see any hope that we shall stand? And then the other one was just a little bit prettier. Hope and memory shall live still in some hidden valley where the grass is green.
I do like that one.
Just little snippets that I found.
Hopeful.
The only other thing. Oh, I learned some new agricultural words, as is my want. So tilth, buyer, however you pronounce it. I feel like I'm scrolling really far. There was a whole bunch of them that was basically talking about all the ways in which they have agriculture. And I was like, I had to look up every single one. Of course I did. Yeah. Oh, and that the tower is 50 fathoms tall. So that's like 60 feet. Sorry, 300 feet. There we go.
I was like,
that makes more sense. 300 feet. So that's like 30 stories. That's really, really effing tall.
That's a football field, right?
Yes.
That's 100 yards?
100 yards. Yep.
Okay. It's like, yeah. Pretty tall.
Believe it or not, I had to wait for my brain to go from vertical to horizontal to be like, yes.
That tracks. Yes, I believe that's true.
I am somebody who has to jump in the map like Joey in Friends. I am that person.
Yeah. You cannot be blamed for that. It makes sense.
So that's all I had for chapter 1.
Okay. Book 5, chapter 2, The Passing of the Grey Company. We are now back with Merry, Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, and Theoden's escort, including Theoden. They also head off in the night after the Nazgul sighting that sent Gandalf and Pippin on their way, and they soon encounter Halbarad Dunedain, Ranger of the North, with 30 other rangers and Elrond's sons, Elrohir and Elladan.
Mm-hmm.
The latter two have a message for Aragorn from their father. The days are short. If thou art in haste, remember the paths of the dead. So I'm not going to lie, with how wise Elrond is, I might just take this as a message. You should take the paths of the dead and obey. How would you have handled such a message?
I agree. I think Elrond has such street cred for me after the Council of Elrond, much less whatever other kind of history he probably has, because Aragorn is old enough to have had other dealings with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'd probably take it on faith.
It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, I'm in a hurry. Why would I not be?
Yeah. I was not expecting other rangers, so for him to roll on up with 30 rangers, I was like, that's cool. That's like having your own special forces squad, right? Like,
okay, yeah,
that's gotta help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got
seen
really
Aragorn.
excited. Yeah. So even if they're only half of Aragorn, they're still bringing something to the party for sure.
Absolutely worth more than just one person.
Yes,
without a doubt. Which is mentioned, I believe, by Theoden or one of his men.
Mm-hmm.
So Halbarad also has a gift for Aragorn from the Lady of Rivendell. She wrought it in secret and sent with it a message. The days now are short. Either our hope cometh or all hopes end. Therefore I send thee what I have made for thee. Farewell, Elfstone. Sorry, that was it. Aragorn told him to keep it for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any thoughts on what it might be? And did you have any thoughts about the reveal that it was likely Galadriel that sent this aid their way?
I had no idea what it was, but I hooped it up. I was super excited when we were like, yes, because Lady Galadriel can do no wrong. And so obviously she was smart enough. Once Aragorn said, I didn't send the message, I also was like, well, who did? And for a second I was like, is anybody suspicious of this? Maybe it's a trick.
It's a trap.
Yeah. You know what? Tolkien did this to me. All right.
Yeah.
I'm suspicious for a reason. But I loved the idea that it was Lady Galadriel because I already think that she's preternaturally intelligent and thinks of things and knows things and communicates at a level that's way beyond regular folk.
Also very much seems like she probably has long sight, but like long sight extreme, right? Because she's got the pool and all that. It's
level 10.
Yeah, way higher level than Denethor in the long sight. At least I'm going to tell myself that she is far superior in every way to Denethor. So Theoden takes Merry under his wing, getting him I don't know what I meant to write here, a point and some gear. Getting him something and some gear, and asking him to be his esquire, which Merry is super grateful for, having felt very much like unwanted baggage after Pippin's departure. They spent some time together talking and eating, and Merry went so far as to say Theoden would be as a father to him. So I found this really sweet. What about you?
I thought it was very endearing. And I think that it's ironic that they're each swearing fealty almost at the same time. So I really liked the fact that chapter 2 started off right where chapter 1 started off, so that our gap was closer. I know that it doesn't necessarily mean that it will stay that way, but I was kind of relieved when I saw that. And I found it very noteworthy that both Merry and Pippin are having kind of parallel experiences. Only, in my opinion, Merry has a much better benefactor.
Yeah. I realize now it was pony. He got a pony.
Yes, he did get a pony. A good hill pony, no less.
Yeah. I definitely think Merry is making out like a bandit here when it comes to, I don't know, liege lords.
There you go. That's a good
Pippin, not so much, unfortunately. So I must admit I didn't actually look at the map to like really get a concept of how all of these things are playing together, but they go back to Helm's Deep and take a break. And I don't know how that like works out as far as like whether they were heading away or towards any relevant things, but whatever. Aragorn eventually decides, after much deliberation and the use of the Palantir, to part ways with Theoden's company. He has decided to take the paths of the dead. Any thoughts about the exchange with Theoden or Legolas and Gimli about the matter?
I think that I liked seeing what was said by the seer. So they shared the whole prophecy, I guess, from Malbeth. From the north shall he come, need shall drive him, he shall pass the door to the paths of the dead. That whole, I like that. That's fun lore.
Yeah.
I thought that it was very drastic the way that he was described, like he was physically changed over the course of a night. And so when he mentions using the Palantir, I was like, okay, that makes sense. But also, dang it, what are you doing? And, that whole exchange happens on paper as well, as people are like, well, Gandalf told you shouldn't mess with it. And his reply is essentially, well, I told Gandalf it's actually mine. And if I have the strength and wherewithal to use it, I'm going to.
Wasn't it something like, you forget with whom you speak or something? Yes. I was like, dang. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's exactly what he said. You forget to whom you speak. What do you fear that I should say to him? Did I not openly proclaim my title before the doors of Edoras? So, and he apparently revealed himself to Sauron in the armor of Theoden to obscure him somewhat. And he knows that Sauron hasn't forgotten Isildur and hasn't forgotten the Sword of Elendil, and knows that he revealed that it has been reforged. So, I think that it was a big gamble, but it got him the information he needed, because immediately after that, he goes, well, I guess I have no choice. It has to be the paths of the dead, So the fact that Elrond told him, and then when he was looking in the Palantir and seeing the doom that's coming for everyone, he really felt like he had no choice.
Yeah, this was the way. There was a couple things from this. Mary was feeling cast aside again and missing Pippin even more, which made me sad. I think it's so sweet whenever like either one of them is like, man, I really wish
miss
Pippin
my buddy
were here. I know, it's so like
it's real.
It's so real. And then I agree that Aragorn using the stone to make Sauron fearful was a bold move, but like seems like maybe it's gonna pay off. And then whenever the party, not Aragorn's party, but like Theoden's party leaves with Pippin and Éomer, Aragorn says, "There go three that I love, and the smallest not the least. He knows not to what end he rides, yet if he knew, he would still go on." And I was just like, ah!
He's so precious.
It was so precious. I love how like everyone who encounters the hobbits can't help but just love them and admire them and respect them, because they do. They leave such an impression, which I think is so great. Okay, so Aragorn's company, which I assume is what the Grey Company is.
I was probably 3/4 of the way through the chapter before I felt like that was confirmed.
Yeah.
I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, so is that the Grey Company? No.
I think it's them. I'm pretty sure it's
these
them.
Guys. I think it's these guys.
So, complete with Rangers, Gimli, and Legolas, then rides for Edoras and Dunharrow, passing one night under Éowyn's roof before moving on. While there, Aragorn exchanges some tense words with Éowyn about his chosen path and her appointed duty to watch over her people rather than riding to battle. A taste of her dissatisfaction goes as follows. "All your words are but to say, you are a woman and your part is in the house. But when men have died in battle and honor, you have leave to be burned in the house, for the men will need it no more." That one hit me pretty hard. Standout moments from their little conversation?
That one hit me hard, but at the same time, I know this is going to be very unpopular. I'm with Aragorn. Your path is not the one of valor or song, but no less important. Like, someone has to make home safe for those who can't go to war. And it's not as glorious, but it's still a job that needs doing.
Yeah.
There's more than one way to bring honor to your house. I don't know. I know that's...
It's giving Mulan.
Yeah, and it's hard because it's such a fraught path, because it could be seen as a way to make very gendered roles more palatable. And that's not really what I'm trying to say, but I can see how someone would hear it that way. And if that's the case, then I'm sorry. But I do think that there's honor in making sure that home exists for those who can't go to fight. And that if she left to be a trained shield maiden as she is and as her rights, I think that it would be without honor if she didn't leave someone equally as capable as her to ensure the well-being of those individuals. I think that's probably my takeaway. I understand the frustration 100%. I absolutely agree that she is a trained shield maiden and she should not be withheld from the battle simply because she's a woman. I have no issue with that whatsoever. What I have an issue with is your duty needs to be done as well. So if you go, who picks up that duty?
The people still need a leader. And you're you were given that task. Were you given that task because you were a woman? Yeah.
Yes. And that is unfortunate. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. But those people still require leadership and someone to look out for them. And if you abandon them, how can you say you have honor if you leave vulnerable people without leadership?
Yeah. I flagged a little umami here, which is, I think, almost word for word from the movies. But Aragorn asks, "What do you fear, my lady?" And she replies, to stay behind bars until use and old age accept them, and all chance of doing great deeds is gone beyond recall and desire.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that. Honestly, like, now that I'm kind of rehashing that conversation, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's a character in the Wheel of Time who is a woman who is a like high up member of a very well-to-do, important house, and she leaves, and she swears to be, she goes to be a hero of the Horn, right? She just wants something more than like the clerical, like noble life. She wants her life to be more exciting than that. And honestly, there's a lot of, now that I'm thinking of it, parallels between those two, just because it's,
even if that's a great analogy.
Yeah, even if that's the thing that you were like born into, you don't have to like it, you don't have to want it, and you could crave something more. And yeah, I think my preference would have been she finds somebody else to appoint and gets to go.
Yeah.
But is there someone else that's as capable? Right. And question, that's a big.
And I don't want to undercut the heart of your question, which really to me is like, is it fair that because she's a woman, she got left with this duty? No.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's fair. However, there's still honor in the task.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I think that my final note about these conversations is what happens the next morning, which I really didn't like. She literally fell on her knees and begged Aragorn to let her join him as a last-ditch effort. And I was just like, I don't like, no. I get that she was so desperate, but I just didn't love the look. But I did feel her pain. Like, I ached for her. Because she
the level of frustration, because she's also portrayed as a proud woman, so I'm sure it was no small thing for her to throw herself and prostrate in that manner. I'm completely sympathetic to her plight, and also having a hand dealt to you that you don't want. Also very sympathetic to that plight, but that doesn't mean you there's still honor to be found, there's still good to be done. I hear you.
I always related to her so much because, like, growing up, I'm from the Midwest, and this is probably true in a lot of places, but like, there were just things that they just didn't want girls to do, right? And so, like, my family and like some of my family friends every year would take the boys, like the dads would take the boys on this like overnight float trip. And I was always like, oh my God, I would love to go. That sounds amazing.
Why can't I go?
Outdoor adventure, please. Like, that is my middle name. They never let me go because I was a girl. And it just like, it literally just to this day, clearly I haven't forgotten. And it was a long, long time ago. So I get it. I'm my me and Eowyn, man, we're like this. I get it. I feel bad. Okay. Well, the Great Company, as we're assuming they are, make it to the door to the path of the dead. Gimli's blood runs chill, and we get a little note that all hearts quailed, save for that of Legolas, for whom ghosts of men have no terror. I thought that was an interesting note. Did it get your attention at all?
It did. I think it was a nice contrast to Gimli, who's talking like, quote, pursued by a groping horror. So it was quite a contrast, and especially for Gimli, almost feels like not a fraud, but maybe like a failure as a dwarf to be scared of a cave. So I did think that it was good contrast there.
That gave us a little bit of humor in an otherwise very dark situation.
Very dark.
And what kind of a dwarf am I to hesitate going into a cave that an elf would go into, or something along those lines? So
I have a question to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you read this chapter as all of the Rangers went, or just the 3 named Rangers went to Elrond's sons and Halbrand?
I read it as they all went.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you read it differently?
No, I was unclear. By the time I realized to ask the question, I was most of the way through the chapter, and I was like, I think they said all the Rangers went with them, but
Yeah, which is different than the movie, so it makes sense that you'd be like, wait, because none of the Rangers went with them in the movies.
Yeah. No, I don't remember meeting any other Rangers in the movies.
Yeah. Okay. I think they did, but it's not like somebody who stands
Well, and
out.
I haven't rewatched Return of the King yet, so maybe.
Yeah, that's why I'm hesitating, because I feel like I'm picturing somebody that I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is a Ranger, but I don't think they're ever like extremely explicit about who it is, right?
Gotcha.
And so it would make sense that you, never having read them, would have no concept that that's a Ranger.
Got it.
If I recall. I think. Anyways, I hate being wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went. All right, so Legolas eventually notes that the dead have begun following the party. Mm-hmm. And Eladan replies in the affirmative, noting that they'd been summoned. Mm-hmm. So I don't remember them being summoned. What summoned them, do you think? That was what felt unclear to me.
So there was a point earlier when they first got to the big scary rock. Mm-hmm. That Aragorn just kind of spoke into the atmosphere. Hold on.
Was that before this? Okay.
Yes.
That's on me. I must have, when I was going back and outlining, I must have missed that. Because no. Because my literal next, well, maybe there are multiple stones. Because literally the next thing in my outline is the party reaches the stone of Eric, and Aragorn takes a moment yelling to summon the dead to follow him, mm-hmm. calling Halbarad to unfurl the banner, and then they continued riding along the road.
Okay, so he calls for everyone to follow me at the door, not the stone, so that was my mistake. Okay. I think the implication is that he's talking to the party.
That's what I remember.
Okay. Drew near. He saw Aragorn kneeling while Eladan held aloft both torches. So before him were the bones. So he says something over the bones. So, yes, this is it. So he's standing over the bones, right? A mighty man, he had been clad in mail, and still his harness lay there whole, for the cavern's air was dry as dust, and his hauberk was gilded, etc., etc. Aragorn did not touch him, but after gazing silently for a while, he rose and sighed. Hither shall the flowers of Symbol mine come never unto world's end, he murmured. 9 mounds and 7 there are now, green with grass. Through all the long years he has lain at the door that he could not unlock. Whither does it lead? Why would he pass? None shall ever know. For that is not my errand, he cried, turning back and speaking to the whispering darkness behind. Keep your hoards and your secrets hidden in the accursed years. Speed only, we ask. Let us pass and then come. I summon you to the stone of Eric.
Oh, you caught it. Okay, well, I missed that completely. My mistake. So they get to the stone of Eric, having been followed, and Aragorn summons them and calls them. He unfurls the banner, which was the gift. I guess Arwen had crafted the king's banner for Aragorn. And then they continued along the road, and the dead followed without further ceremony. And that ends the chapter. Did that surprise you, how that all went down?
It was intense. It was not what I was expecting. It was different than the movie, the way that I remember the movie.
Yeah.
I think that it makes sense that it was less climactic here, because it's not the climax of the movie.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I always felt like it was a separate climax, the way that it was represented on screen. And so here it's him marshaling forces. I did like the end of this chapter. I was like, so 2 chapter closes in a row that were really strong closes. But the next day there came no dawn, and the Grey Company passed on into the darkness of the storm of Mordor and were lost to mortal sight. But the dead followed them. And I was like,
dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun,
dun. Yes.
So I thought that was a hella good way to end the chapter. I'm like, okay, we're only 2 chapters in, and we are bringing the sauce.
The doom and gloom, the suspense, without a doubt. So do you have any further thoughts before we pick an MVP?
Oh God. There was one little blip where Gimli mentions Caves of Wonder below, mentions their game, and that he won it by a single orc, and that there are Caves of Wonder, and do you think we'll ever see it? And Legolas is like, essentially, I told you, buddy, if we ever see a day of peace, yes, we will come back and we will see it. So we get a little callback to the bromance from before, and I honestly loved it. So I thought it was great. I think that was all I really had from chapter 2 that we didn't touch on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a tradition where we pick an MVP from the chapters we've read for each episode. Cue the music. Jessica, who would you name as your MVP this episode?
That's so hard. I think I have to go with Aragorn.
Okay.
He's making the hard calls. He's taken the really sketchy paths because based on the information he has available to him, that's what it's going to take for him to be able to fight against the enemy. Yeah. So I'm gonna give it up for Aragorn.
That is fair. This is tricky because we've got two POVs, like two separate POV chapters, right? So I have to I think I'm giving honorable mention to Gandalf just because he truly is taking one for the team by going and dealing with Denethor. But I agree with you that Aragorn made the hardest of calls and is doing the most dangerous of tasks despite much opposition, and it seems that he is so far succeeding, right? The dead is following him. The dead are following him, which feels like a huge win. And so yeah, even though Gandalf had to put up with that old crotchety man, it's gonna be Aragorn for me too. So yeah, I agree. I think he
Gandalf was definitely a contender because Denethor does not seem easy to manage, and I can understand that there's value and weight to managing that situation, but I feel like Aragorn is the one who paid off in these chapters, so that's ultimately how I got there.
And just another little I don't want to as official as honorable mention, but I do want to call out Theoden for kind of taking Merry under his wing because that was really sweet. That was a sweet moment, but obviously nothing as intense as Aragorn. Right. So, yeah. Okay. Same page. Right. Let us know in the comments or on Discord. As always, who your MVP is for this episode. I think there's at least a couple contenders for sure, and we always love to hear what you think.
Yeah. So that's it for us for this week. We would ask you all to read Book 5, chapters 3-5 for next week. We would like to say thank you so much for joining us in episode 1 for season 4 of But Are There Dragons, brought to you by your host Jessica Sadai and Kritter XD. Don't forget to follow us at But Are There Dragons on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, and But Dragons Pod, just 1 T, on X. You can also find us on social media as Kritter XD and Shelf Indulgence. That's it for today. We're going to continue workshopping new catchphrases through season 4, so let us know on social media how you feel about this one. Farewell, listeners. Ride unto great renown. Bye.
Bye.